Mallory DeVries moved from Indianapolis back home to Charles City, Iowa. Her daughter was born with challenging health needs, and she wanted her family to have her extended family support. She got into farming. Vegetables and flowers were okay, but she and her husband really found their thing with gourmet mushrooms until they both realized that this was not how they should be farming. Hi, I'm Dave Price. Mallory didn't fail to grow mushrooms. She and her husband grew about all they could handle. The problem for her was what she used to grow those gourmet mushrooms. She'll explain that a little bit later in our conversation, but we begin with the move that eventually led to those mushrooms. All right, Mallory, why do you do what you do?
Well, my story is kind of a long one. So my daughter was born in 2016. We had some complications during labor and delivery. She was born with or when she was born, she had an injury on her brain. So we spent a lot of time kind of figuring out what life was going to look like. We had moved out to Indianapolis. We were kind of both working kind of corporate-y kind of jobs. And after her diagnosis and kind of realizing we were going to need a little bit more help, we decided to move back home to Iowa, where we thought we would never come back to. So we were really fortunate that we were able to find an acreage kind of close to where we had grown up so we could be close to our parents and have a little bit of help with our kiddo and help them as they're aging as well. So we were able to find a nice little acreage. We were pretty lucky. Finding land in Iowa is not the easiest thing. Um, and we've both been really health conscious at this point and really want to do what's best for our growing family and kind of growing our own food. And that's kind of how we started down this journey. We never thought we would be, market gardeners or we never really pictured like doing it for a living. Um, so we started off pretty small, just growing some veggies for ourselves, some pasture raised poultry. Um, that's kind of how we got started. So that's kind of my why is my family and my kiddos that I really wanted to provide for and kind of live sustainably and just grow what I wanted to eat.
But that foundation there, I would assume, really would explain why you're willing, you and your husband both, to put the work in that is necessary to make this happen, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you have any kid, but especially a kid who, needs the extra nutrition, the extra
Yeah.
support and things like that. And you'll do anything for your kids. So, we literally got our hands dirty and learned and dug in and decided this is what we want to do for her, for us, for our community. Just really felt right.
And you've kind of devoted your professional side of this to a couple of phases of food. Let's start with the growing side of this. So talk about what you all grow and why.
So we very quickly learned that doing like vegetables for market gardening was very much work. It was like, wow. And having two very little kids. Well, when we first bought our acreage, I was pregnant. So my little guy was born shortly after we moved in here. So, you know, we grew vegetables for ourselves. Um, when the pandemic hit, we started selling a little bit to our neighbors and, just a little here and there, but quickly learned that vegetables were too much work for us. So we started growing flowers, and flowers are uh, a lot easier. They're not as hands-on, they're still work, don't get me wrong, but there was just something very healing about growing flowers that I just really loved and started growing those and selling those. We had our chicken, our pastured chicken from like almost day one when we moved here. We started doing that for ourselves. That was pretty easy to scale up. Just ran a couple extra every summer. and started selling those as well. So we started off really small. During the pandemic, it felt like our community, needs this and wants this. It really just kind of took off. It wasn't intentional. It just really happened.
So how are
And
you figuring this out? Like where are you seeking information?
um, well, I can tell you, my husband is the type of guy who will sit down and he will research something for until there's no more to research.
Okay.
So really, he learned how to build this chicken tractor. He did all this research that we needed. We also have some really great nonprofits around us that helped us get connected to buyers. And one of those is Healthy Harvest of North Iowa. They really helped us to identify the restaurants and like which farmers markets to start selling at, and just to find those customers. So we definitely learned on the fly. Like flowers were I grew up in a little tiny town, like, but no agriculture experience at all. So like this was all just like learning by failing,
Well,
essentially.
that part is fascinating to me. We had on the podcast, we've had a woman who went to from Indiana, went to college with the idea that she was going to move to New York City after college and be a fashion designer. Okay. She married a hog farmer, and hogs were not her thing.
Hmm.
Her husband realized it. She realized it, not her thing. She wasn't going to be an asset on the farm when it came to hogs. But one thing led to another, and they decided to begin a shrimp farm. Husband had some issues trying to work it all out. I mean, it's kind of tough to start. And, you got theirs is organic. They live in Indiana. I need to point that out again. They're not on the coast, with an ocean right there. And so there was a lot of learning process that goes along with it to try to figure out. Some of it's trial and error, like you're talking about, but a lot of deep dive research. There weren't a lot of shrimp farmers out across the country doing what they were doing. So that can be like an overwhelming thing for people to try to figure out when you're trying to base your livelihood on something that you didn't go to school for, or you weren't raised in that industry. So that's why I was curious how you handled the kind of ups and downs of, all right, we're doing vegetables. Well, oh man, this is a lot of work, not our thing. Flowers, okay, this is working.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said about, being kind of young and hungry and willing to just kind of dive in and do it. I mean, the older we get now, the more we're like, how did we do that? That was so much work. Like, but you're young and ambitious and that's the time to try things and learn and dive in. And then so speaking of kind of like this indoor operation, this like shrimp thing, which is totally fascinating. We've
Totally.
had a couple here in Iowa too that
Yeah,
have popped up, but
fascinating.
so in August of 2021, we had this flood, this really like it was like a couple mile radius here of 10 inches of rain that fell overnight, like within a few hours, 10 inches. And it
Not normal.
completely wiped out our garden
Mm,
and drowned all 80 of our meat birds in
mm,
just one fell swoop. So that was, yeah, August of 2021. And that was kind of like, I mean, August is right in the middle of the season,
yeah,
and that was a huge bummer. We had, these beautiful raised beds with all this trucked in compost that's, thousands of dollars of hours
sure.
and labor and materials just gone. And that was hard because I was like, we're finally getting the hang of this,
Hmm.
like we got these, our markets are growing. Everything was looking good. Oh, it was just such a bummer. Um, but it did kind of push us into looking into some sort of innovation like we were talking about, and we decided to try cultivated mushrooms, which was something we had kind of been dabbling with and were interested in,
Okay.
um, and felt like it was less risky. Again, we didn't mean for it to become this huge thing. I think in my blog post that you read, I wrote that we have a hard time doing anything half-assed, and that is just the truth. That is just us. So we
But just
did
as a
we
reminder, and sorry to interrupt you.
yeah.
So that August 2021, you have 10 inches. So you've lost everything. You've lost the birds, everything you had going pretty much washed away. So you're sitting there in August like, holy crap, and that's probably not the word you used. Like, I mean, is it sort of like that dire at that point after that big flood?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of at the bottom of a valley. Not, I wouldn't
Okay.
quite call it a valley, but we're kind of at the bottom. So it just like not only did it wash away all of our beds, it also washed in a ton of like grass and weed
Mm,
seed and just it just was a disaster.
hmm
Just I don't I don't know if we could have, if we had put all of our might into fixing it for that season. I don't know if we could have, but it was
hmm
definitely like, all right, season's over, it's
Yeah.
done. It was
hmm
just a disaster. Um, and just yeah, like I said, just a huge bummer. And knowing that that happens to so many small scale farms and there's no insurance,
Yeah.
there's nothing for you. It's
Yeah,
just your
you're screwed,
season's just
right?
over.
You're just
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
Yeah. And just like mentally how exhausting that is was really tough. So
Okay, so you had been dabbling in mushrooms before this flood. So what convinced you that, all right, this is our sign that this is where we're going?
so I there's so many amazing health benefits of mushrooms, and I think that's what initially kind of drew me in. Like they're really like good for your brain, and they have all these health benefits. They were definitely kind of having a moment
Hmm
in 2021. I think probably still kind of are.
Sure.
People are aware that these like lion's mane mushrooms, these like specialty grown mushrooms have some really fantastic health benefits. Realizing that no one else around us was doing it. I didn't really know why at the time. Um, but we already had these really great connections in the local food system, people that, knew about our chickens and bought, the small amount of vegetables that we did do and the flowers. And we had these great customers. And we just started really small in like this tiny tent. Like you don't need much to get started. A lot of people get started in their basement. Um, so it was just kind of something we added as another product. And then, wow, people loved them. Like just it exploded. We also had a really great program going. Um, the local food purchasing uh, program through the federal government. So that
hmm
was like we could bring our produce or mushrooms, meat, anything to local food banks and get paid fair market price for it. So we were able to, what we weren't able to sell at farmers markets, we were also able to get to people who were actually hungry. So that was an incredible program, and everything was just working. It just worked. Um, and before we knew it, that kind of just became our primary. That was just kind of our
hmm
primary product. That's what people wanted. That was what was easy for us to grow. Um, it's indoors. We don't have to worry about flooding.
hmm
So yeah, it felt like the right choice at the time.
So all right, two things. One, can you go a little deep dive into what types of mushrooms these things are? But before I forget the second question, I got to throw that out there so that it doesn't escape me. I am also fascinated by the indoor growing process. So, like, what does that look like? Has that had to expand as you found success doing this?
Yeah, so the process is it's like nothing I would have ever imagined before. So essentially it's the mushrooms that we grew were like specialty oyster, like trumpets, lion's mane, chestnuts. So these are not your irregular button mushrooms. Those
Hmm
are grown in a completely different way. So these like specialty, these gourmet mushrooms, there's, you know, a, a hundred different varieties, but we had, three to five usually on rotation
Okay.
that worked really well and grew really well in the environment that we built. So after we graduated from the tent that we had, like literally, it's just like, the little greenhouse
Yeah.
tent.
Yeah.
It was essentially that's all it was. It just is, that's how we started. we were able to build a room inside of a room that's off of our garage. So kind of
Okay.
strange. But basically just put up some plastic sheeting. It's
Uh-huh.
got to be very clean, like immaculate. Like mushrooms will get, bacteria. If you get bacteria, you will lose the whole entire flush. So it has to be really clean. The moisture level has to be just right. We had lights that were like on a timer. So you kind of just replicating like a really it felt like a sauna, like
Mm.
um, but a really clean one. So essentially, what you do is you start with a block of substrate. Some people buy these blocks pre-made, but we made our own. So we would buy hardwood pellets and grain, and you mix those together into this perfect little lunch that mushrooms like to eat.
Okay.
And then you have to sterilize that. So you pack these bags into this giant sterilizer. And my husband like built all this stuff, built all this out. Like I think I said at the beginning, he's just one of those guys that he dives into something, he learns it and he does it. And it was
Nice choice by
fascinating.
you.
Thank you.
I
Yes.
can attest there is one wife in my household who wishes she would have married somebody like that with those skills.
Oh, I mean, it was just really cool that he was just determined to figure this out, and teach me how to do it so I could help. So essentially, we were making these blocks ourselves, sterilizing them. You pull them out and you dump the mycelium, like the culture. So it's just basically like liquid. So you're and then you shake it around and let it do its thing for a couple weeks in the dark. Just kind of
Okay.
sits there. And you can tell when it's getting ready. I have some pictures on my blog to kind of help, but you can tell when it's like when the mushrooms are ready to be born. It's the mycelium, the block is white. It's got like mycelium is like basically the roots of the mushroom. So
Okay.
then you throw it into the room, which has the perfect environment that it wants to grow in, and you cut a hole in the bag, and the mushrooms pop out like within a few hours. Like it's really fascinating, and we were hooked. It's fun, and the, they taste good. They're
That
so
helps.
good. Yeah, if I mean, we met a lot of people who were like, ew, mushrooms, there was that crowd, but also it's like if you're a person who loves mushrooms like I do, like this is awesome. This is exciting. This is amazing. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you talk, so like start to finish, what is the process? And I'm sorry I don't know more about it because I'm wondering because if you're doing it indoor, is this something you're constantly replicating? So it's a year-round thing.
It absolutely can be year round. And that was one of the big draws for us too, was, having these really nutrient dense products in
Mm-hmm.
the middle of winter
Mm-hmm.
is amazing. So that was really hard to like if we wanted to go away for a week or two,
Sure.
it's really hard to stop, take a
Sure.
break, because it is just a never ending cycle of, you know, of like rotating these through. And you rotate them through pretty quickly. Um, After they sit in the dark for a little while, they go into the room and they a week tops until they're done flushing. Sometimes they'll flush a second or third time depending on the variety. But you're always working on those blocks to backfill. So it's never ending.
So any idea how many of these you're cranking out a year? And I
I
know you're
didn't
talking
count
about
how
different
many
sizes, so.
blocks. We got to a point where I know we moved about 2,100 pounds of
Hmm.
mushrooms, which I could probably like do a little bit of back math because I think it's like each of these bags created maybe like 3 pounds
Okay.
minimum, sometimes more,
Okay.
depending on the variety or in the conditions. Sometimes
Okay.
they just wow.
Sure. Sure.
But a lot, a lot. And when I was saving some of these blocks for some friends that were growing flowers, a bigger flower farm than I ever had. And they wanted to use some of these, what we call spent blocks. So these blocks are they're done producing, but they still have a lot of really great organic material in
Hmm.
them. So we've been, using it to make some of our own compost, but we had just so much that I offered these flower farmers a chance, hey, do you want,
Yeah.
I know you do your own composting too. You want some blocks to throw in? And I said, yeah, we'd come by in a couple weeks with a truck and pick them up. And so I had been throwing those those bags, those spent blocks, just kind of into the corner, like, oh, I'll get those ready for those
Hmm.
guys in a couple weeks. And I went out that morning they were going to come, and I went out there and started stripping off all the plastic and putting them into, into containers that these guys could take so they could use them for their compost. And just like something just kind of hit me, and I was just like, look at all that plastic. Like,
Oh.
what am I like? It just had this moment of, just what am I doing?
Hmm.
Cleaning this room with chemicals, and you're having to wear a mask. What to in there, you shouldn't be breathing in all these, like I just had that moment where I started questioning, you know, what is farming? What is this farming? Like,
Hmm.
what am I doing? So that was kind of why I wrote that blog post that about this farming.
So you decided to make some changes. So what'd you do? How did you, plastics were bothering you once you see it all piled up there. So what'd you decide had to change?
So at that moment, my husband and I just kind of started talking, and he was like, yeah, it's kind of been bothering me too, and
Hmm.
we still were doing, we still had our mushroom operation, or our chicken, our poultry operation at that time. So
Okay.
we just were, talking about what is next? Like, what are we doing here? Because we still have this garden that is just neglected. The kids are getting older. Like, do we want, like, what are we doing?
Hmm.
Essentially. Um, so we did start to scale back a bit. We've looked into other options of more sustainable kind of options. But essentially, the LFPA program, when that was defunded earlier in the year, by the Trump administration, we just kind of gave up. I was just like, I just I'm feeling so defeated, um, and just like tired, uh, of trying to move this poultry that people don't want to pay this price for,
Sure.
and these mushrooms that I just don't feel that good about anymore. That relationship that I had with the product I'm selling was really just not the same as it used to be. So right now we're basically kind of back to square one where we were, which is for growing food for ourselves, and that's about it right now. Um, Besides our day jobs.
So then, so what, do you have a longer term plan to bring it back in a different way?
So in my day job, what I another conversation that we've been having is, you know,
And talk a
these
little bit
broad,
about your day job. Sorry.
sure, yeah, yeah. That actually could help here because I do communications work and some writing and editing and things like that for nonprofits in my area and at the state level that are working to kind of answer some of these questions about sustainability and what that, just because you're a local grower, that doesn't necessarily make you a sustainable farmer or a sustainable farm. So these broader questions about what can we do about it. So looking at I've been taking kind of a deep dive into the mushroom growers across the state and trying to figure out how we can kind of help them to work together to with working together to make it a more sustainable practice, whether that's the substrate that they're sourcing, making sure that that's from here. We also were ordering in a lot of our spawn and our cultures from out of state, so like we're missing that infrastructure here in the state. So kind of just looking at this broader picture of using my experience in this operation of like what what could a sustainable localized mushroom network kind of look like here in the state, and kind of learning what we've learned from other industries or other products, and how can we apply that to to other types of grow, to shrimp, to
Hmm.
microgreens, to these other kind of alternative ways that people are growing food in Iowa. How can we make sure that those are sustainable and we don't end up replacing corn and beans with another system that is also not helping? So I guess those are the larger questions that I'm trying to tackle now with some of this work that I'm doing. But I think you asked about what our plans are for the farm. That I have no idea. We'll probably try something new again next year, like I don't know, maybe we're just the kind of farm that just does kind of deep dives into weird things and learns about it and helps other people.
But I mean, you figured out mushrooms. Now, you also then later figured out the way, part of the process you didn't like because of the heavy reliance on plastic. But you did figure it out. I know you're sort of having fun here, but I mean, you went through the ups and downs of figuring it all out, and you had to keep expanding. So clearly, you're doing something right, and you found a marketplace for it, and etc. So do you sit here like, is that deflating, or have you sort of transferred that energy focused on how can we do this on a broader scale in a better way? And that helps to kind of, you know, as guys, all we do is bury our feelings, bury disappointments until it all comes out one day. But like, how do you deal with that?
I mean, for a little while, I felt kind of bummed,
Sure.
like, oh, just here's something else that just didn't quite work out. But I think it was such a good experience, and for a while there, once you get into a market and you really start selling and you feel successful, it's really easy to forget why you started, and it's really easy to just justify the chemical use. It's really easy to justify these things and like okay, I guess I kind of get how we got here as a
Hmm.
state and how our agriculture has gotten here. Like luckily I kind of snapped out of it, one day, kind of just had that realization, but it kind of gave me that perspective of like now I kind of get it, like it's really hard to admit when you've kind of gone off the path, or when maybe you're
Sure.
doing something you shouldn't be doing, but it's making you money. And so I think I'm really glad that we did it. And I don't want to, I'm not throwing mushroom growers under the bus. I still think there's a lot of potential in this industry. And if we're just importing it from another state, we might as well be doing it here anyway. But like, I just think the perspective that it gave me as somebody who's working in this space of trying to improve the local food system, I'm just hoping more people maybe will do that. Kind of take a look at how do you feel about this product? Like, don't look at your bank account, you know, when you look at this product or you eat this or when you're selling this, how do you feel about it? And that's kind of a way that we can talk or define local food. It's harder to define, but like that relationship or how you feel about your own product, I think there's something to be said about that relationship and about what that can mean if we're willing to look at it.
Thank you. We appreciate the conversation, and I hope you'll come back when you've figured out mushrooms the way you want to grow mushrooms to see how you've solved this.
Yeah, I'm working on it, and there are people that are working on it and doing
For
some
sure.
really awesome things. So I am keeping an eye, and I hope that this is an industry that Iowa can do well, along with other edible foods. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
For more about what Mallory is now doing outside her paused mushroom farm and what she's learning, you can check out our profile piece about her. Find that in the weekly American Farmland Owner newsletter. It's the place where landowners get their news with interviews, trends, challenges, and more. It's all there for free. Sign up now at AmericanFarmlandowner.com. Thanks for checking it out. And if you would, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast and watch us grow. Thanks for caring about the future of our farmland. We'll talk to you next week.